Welcome to Vainglory Analytics video 13. Show me the data. You know, like in that 90s movie where the guy says,
What can I do for you? Show me the
data. It's a famous quote, I'm sure you've heard it. Here's why we're talking about it today. There are lots of questions you can't answer if you don't have any data. You might wonder things like these. Which heroes are picked most often in high-tier play? Which heroes earn the most gold per minute? Which heroes deal the most damage in typical play? Do matches really take 20 to 25 minutes? These are just a few examples of questions that you can't answer unless you have data about a lot of matches. In fact, that brings up another question. How many matches are actually being played on any given day? Again, a question we can't answer without data we don't ordinarily have. So where are we going to get data to answer these questions? Super Evil Megacorp doesn't exactly give that data away, do they? Actually, yes they do. The API is a tool for asking for match data and getting it. But of course, most people don't want to go through the trouble of getting an API key, then downloading a ton of matches. In fact, if we dig into the fine print of the developer documentation, we find that downloading all matches is actually prohibited. But can I download some of them? Well, a long time ago, there was a tool in the API called the Samples Endpoint, meaning you could download a random sample of just some of the matches that had been played. After all, there are tons of matches out there. We don't know how many, but we're not allowed to download them all anyway. But it might be nice to get, say, 5,000 of them and analyze those. That's enough so that if they were chosen randomly, then it might be representative of all the matches. In a future video, I might go more into the details of why it's important for the sample to be random, but let's just say that if it isn't, any conclusions drawn from it are suspect. Anyway, unfortunately, the samples endpoint doesn't work any longer. It hasn't for months. So we have a problem to solve. How can we sample when they don't let us sample? As we dive into that, I want you to know, I decided to be nice about this. Why should I make an effort to sample the API and not share what I did with other people? If I'm going to download a sample of 5,000 matches, I should share them with the world. But my only concern is, I'm not sure I'm allowed to. In fact, I'm not sure I'm allowed to have downloaded them in the first place, since bulk scraping isn't really defined here. I'm going to presume I was allowed to download them for my own purposes to do analysis and make a video, because heck, I'm just imitating a feature they built some time ago but that hasn't worked in ages. That doesn't seem like a violation. But I submitted a query about it to be sure. Until I get an official answer, I won't be sharing my archiving code, the archives themselves, and so on. But if I get a yes, then I'll share the code, the huge data archive, some spreadsheets, everything to help others do their own analyses too. Until then, let's see what the answers are to some of the questions I mentioned earlier. Let's look at these. We'll use the data archive I built to answer them. First, let me tell you a little about the data archive, because you can't trust the conclusions of an analysis unless you know where they're coming from. Here's where I got my data. I asked the API about all the ranked matches that took place from April 5th through 11th, 2018. There were 32,644 such matches in 3v3 and 17,796 in 5v5. I sampled 5,000 of each randomly, meaning that every match had an equal chance to be sampled. The API did not make random sampling easy, but the nerdy details of how that was accomplished will be discussed in another video. The important takeaway here is that the answers are coming from data taken at this specific time. So, let's answer some questions. Which heroes are picked most often in high-tier play? To answer this one, I scanned just the 5v5 matches, and I called high-tier anything in tiers 8 to 10. That gave 449 matches. Rather than give the whole list of heroes, I'll focus on those chosen in more than 1/3 of the matches. Here they are. Vox is extremely popular, being picked in over 3/4 of high-tier matches in our sample, far ahead of the rest of the competition. Next on the list is Rona, also way out ahead of the rest of the field. Then we come to a tighter pack of Celeste, Arden, Idris, and the rest you see here. The power of data. On to the next question. Which heroes earn the most gold per minute? Again, I scanned just the 5v5 matches, but this time I did not restrict myself to high tiers only. So this information is across all 5,000 matches. The gold earning race is much closer. No one is a clear winner, so I'll list the top 10. The top 3 are Rona, Gwen, and Idris, and interesting, if we see who is on this list and the previous list, we get those 3, plus Vox, Alpha, and Varya. 6 heroes to watch for right now, it seems. Okay, so what about our last question for this video? Which heroes deal the most damage in typical play? Again, I scanned just the 5v5 matches, and I did restrict myself to just tiers 8 to 10 again, so just the 449 high-tier matches. The metric being used here is average damage per match against enemy heroes. So this does not count damage to minions, jungle monsters, dragons, objectives, etc. And it's measured in total damage done over the whole match, not damage per second or anything like that. And the winners are Samuel at the top. Again, there was no big gap between any two heroes on the list, so I aimed to include just the top 10, but then 10 and 11 were so close it might be a tie, plus I love me some Scarf, so he's there too. From among the 6 heroes that were on the last 2 lists, we see only 4 on this list as well: Varya, Idris, Vox, Gwen. Clearly some pretty strong heroes, at least in the right hands. So we've answered 3 of these 5 questions, but I've got a lot more to say about this that we'll leave for another video or two. In addition to answering the other 2 questions, some related questions haven't been answered yet, like how was a random sample of matches obtained? I said that the API doesn't give you an easy way to do this, and I also said that getting a truly random sample is important for the analysis to be unbiased. So how exactly did I get these chunks of 5,000 matches? And were they really randomly chosen? That doesn't give any game-related insights, it's just interesting from a problem-solving point of view. And later, when we answer this question, we'll have a chance to talk some actual statistical techniques. You can look forward to a 2-minute overview of confidence intervals in a future video. But for now, go try out some Varya, Idris, Vox, or Gwen, and let me know how they work for you. See you next time.